The Black Christian Problem by Antonio Speaks. Let's get into it.
I thank God for slavery.
All right. We're done. Wrap it up. Wrap it up. Nah, that's great. That is a crazy way to start a video.
And if it wasn't for slavery, I might be somewhere in Africa worshiping a tree.
Black people hate everything about slavery except Christianity.
Facts.
Well, it depends on what you think Christianity is. So for me, Christianity isn't what Christians have made it to be.
I'm talking about
It's
the
not.
Western belief of
Okay.
Christianity.
Well, just because slave masters use Christianity
Absolutely.
doesn't mean they.
That's what
there you go.
that's the point.
Yeah.
If God's word is everlasting, how can you change the word of God that's everlasting
Yeah.
to suit your personal
There you go.
benefit?
Yeah.
Now, this might be one of my most controversial videos, but I gotta keep it 100. Religions, but especially Christianity, is holding the black community back. Now, black people in America are some of the most devoted Christians in the whole entire world. Just Christianity in general in the church, it's a part of black culture. And to just give my personal stance on things, I'm not a Christian. I believe in a higher power, but I don't think it's something that we can perceive. It's not a man, it's not a woman, it's not a, I just can't explain it. And I will say this, I don't knock anybody that is.
Let me say this. The higher power is always going to be beyond identification. So anytime you try to define something or personify it, you're trying to confine it. So if you try to define the Almighty to being a man or to having the characteristics of a man or anything that's anthropomorphic, you are relegating it to the constraints of a human being. So why would God, the infinite and all-powerful source of all that is, that scaffolds reality, creates reality, and governs it, be a man, let alone a white man? Especially when people get into like the visage of Jesus Christ and things like that. And I'm not doubting the existence of the man named Jesus or Yeshua, right? What I am saying is that, well, is that there is no way for you to rationalize a man, a human being the source of things. And you can get into the quantum mechanics of, you know, cause and effect cause of what is it? Consciousness and like what is it? Is it not wave particle duality? The idea that there is always an observer, a conscious observer that turns waves into particles or frequency into particles that creates matter, or that we are, you know, subsequently the source of that observation. That's a whole different thing. I'm going to get into that later. But my point is that I agree with what he's saying, and that the divine, the creator, has to be beyond identification.
Christian, especially our ancestors. I mean, there had to be a God or a higher power when the devil was so real. Slavery in America is downplayed in my opinion. In schools, they really only teach you about 10% of what was really going on. I mean, 400 years of back-to-back brutal non-stop working, you would want to believe that it's something after you die. And then even after slavery, it was still not good for us. And this is where my first question comes in about Christianity. Why did God allow slavery for black people?
To go into slavery, it's because we fell into things that was against God. Do you know that we practice things over there in Africa, the ancestors, as all y'all say, practice things like witchcraft, voodoo, giving into all kind of marriages and things that was not of God?
But when you read the laws, it literally says, you know, there shall be no other gods, like worship no other gods, you know. God strictly says not to seek out spiritualists. You know, a lot of them were worshiping the sun and the moon and all of these different things that were not God. They were creating these idols with the wood, like with the carved out wood of like these idols that they would worship and pray to. And
all right, first of all, that's an oversimplification of African society and religion and spirituality in general, right? Let's just get that out of the way. Not all African societies were worshiping or following the same traditions, right? There's a lot of cultural diversity on that continent, especially considering how the vast degree of genetic diversity. Two, Christians worship an idol every time that they pray to a cross or to Jesus Christ. They have a visage, an image of Jesus in their home or a cross in their home. You literally put the weapon that was used to kill your God on your necklaces and in your homes and pray to it on a daily basis, right? And you can say what you want about me. I wear this shit for the fashion. I wear this shit for the fashion, okay? And I do not mean to disrespect anyone's religion, but let's just call it out for what it is, right? And I'm gonna be transparent. I'm not gonna lie to you. I wear this shit for fashion, and this shit is hard. It is. Anyway, also the Christian cross is not. I'm sorry. The cross itself is not only a Christian symbol, so let's get that out of the way as well. There are many different interpretations of what the cross can be, especially when you look it back to the Ankh nation in Egypt. But I'm not gonna be one of those people today. My point is this, right? It's not like Europeans weren't practicing idolatry as well. Again, like I went back to the Jesus thing, right? When I say as well, let me get this through. Europeans had various spiritual traditions prior to the Christianization of things. You had the pagan, the Celtic interpretations and mythologies and spiritualities and their gods. You had their beliefs in like the fays or the fairies, in the and like woodland beasts and woodland gods, etc. Right? Christianity, the way it works, right, is that Europeans, before they colonized the world, they colonized each other, and so Christianity became the dominant force. But Christianity was first sourced in Africa. The oldest known Bible today is in Ethiopia, right? And so it's inherently not European, right? Palestine. It would be Jesus. That's where he came from, right? Jesus being their God came from Palestine, right? Depicted as a black man or someone of African features, right? But Europeans had the exact same spirit, not the exact same, but they had spiritual traditions as well that were not Christian, like Roman gods, right? Greek gods, etc., right? But they weren't enslaved. The reason why slavery happened is because there were evil people who manipulated a religious text into gaslighting the world into thinking that they had some divine right to enslave people of African descent and extract their country and their people for resources, because they are shallow and hollow individuals who were only focused on the material aspect of the world and not spirituality or righteousness. Because the European abdicated spirituality the minute they made Christianity their God, right? The minute they made white supremacy their God and made Christianity a proxy for that white supremacy, and they created God in their image, okay? And that's the conundrum right there, is that God was created in the image of man more than it was the other way around, at least as it is today, okay? So just as man, this goes to, again, like I said, effect, cause and effect, effect, cause. So just as God created man in his image or its image, man also created God in their image as well. And I want to hyper focus on the fact that white women were there too, don't get me wrong, but white men specifically made the all-powerful entity in the image of a white man, okay? If that's not idolatry, I don't know what is. So whatever psychosis these black folks are going through, I'd say God help them, but that might actually be the problem.
God was not having that.
Do y'all not see the problem? These are literally white supremacist talking points. Oh yeah, the white savior. He came and saved all of the black folks uncivilized in the jungle and put them in America. Even though slavery was bad, we saved you from going to hell.
You know what? I bet you there's a lot of Africans that if they hadn't have been brought over, not saying it was right, don't misunderstand, not justifying the slavery in the situation, but God, I still believe, used it. And now I'm sure there's a lot of Africans that got the gospel and they're in heaven right now because they got the gospel. You know, what would be better? For them to have lived their entire life in Africa free, doing their voodoo or whatever, and then dying and going to hell, right? Or what happened? And then they go to heaven. They get the opportunity.
I love how he said voodoo.
Hey, not justifying slavery, but justifying slavery. Okay, let me say this. Whenever people get on indigenous cultures for things like sun worship, which again is an oversimplification, a misunderstanding of what the actual theology of those cultures, worshiping the sun, which is quite literally the source of life on earth, makes more sense than worshiping an invisible white man in the sky who people have been saying is going to come back for 2,000 years, but it's never shown his face at all. You see what I'm saying? So you think that it's in the Christian mentality, right? It makes more sense to worship a white man that is going to descend from the sky, who has not done anything in 2,000 years, than it does for you to worship the actual source of life on this planet, being the sun. Now, I'm not saying that sun worship is the solution or anything like that, but which one is more rational? You see what I'm saying? Oh, they were worshiping the trees and the water. Well, that's because it's part of nature. Something that we are connected to, that we are intrinsically connected to, that we cannot exist without. Without the water, what do? We die of thirst. We would have never been created in the first place, right? Without the trees, which we get oxygen from, how do you breathe, right? And the various evolutionary processes of organisms and things like that. Without those things, we don't exist. So it makes sense to have some degree of reverence for the things that give you the life that you love in the first place, or at least the life that you purport to love. Moving on from there, right? Again, I'm not saying that I agree with idolatry or pantheism or anything like that. I'm not going into that. What I am saying is I'm just pointing a logical conclusion. Furthermore, the thing about it, and I've had this discussion with Christians before, right? And the various theological interpretations. It is possible in their minds, right, that a person who is Christian, a person who has knowledge of God, but does not accept God, even if they are righteous, will go to hell. But a person who is righteous but has no knowledge of God will go to heaven. And so my interpretation is this. My idea is this, right? If you know that making someone cognizant of God's existence and then their potential rejection is a one-way street path to hell, why would you tell them about God in the first place, especially if they are already righteous? Because now you gave a righteous person the perception of God, the interpretation of your God, and then they choose to reject it. And now that person who was righteous is going to hell. That seems very man-made. There's a very strict moral and binary or dualistic way of thinking. And that duality cannot be of God, because God would be infinite and transcendent of any sort of binaries. Because it would not be confined to such, because binaries rely on definitions or contrasts. And if the Almighty is infinite and all-powerful, it would not be limited to such contrast or practicality.
Or whatever, like... Listen, society has done an amazing job of demonizing or making anything look bad that's not white or of African descent. Let's take voodoo, for example, like he mentioned. We only hear negative and bad things about it, but guess what? Everything has a good and a bad. Fun fact, Harriet Tubman, although she was a Christian, she was also spiritual. She used spiritual signs, navigating by the stars, using nature like we did back in Africa. And guess what? She saved hundreds of slaves, more than what any Christian God did. And the quote that he said about slavery was better because they're going to have heaven after they die is similar to the propaganda that they're trying to push in kids' TV shows nowadays.
Slavery is as old as time and has taken place in every corner of the world, even amongst the people I just left. Being taken as a slave is better than being killed, no? Before you judge, you must ask yourself, what did the culture and society of the time treat as no big deal?
Freedom is better than anything. What they used to say in Britain, man, give me liberty or give me death. Come on now. Listen, I understand your mama was a Christian, your great grandma was a Christian, her mama was a Christian, but guess what? We not back in slavery no more. We now have the tools and the free will to actually critical think and break down the lies that they told our ancestors. Just think about this. Slaves were not allowed to read during slavery. So why would they give them a Bible to read? They wanted you to stay a slave and stay obedient. So why would anything in that book grant you freedom? To get back on topic though, man, a lot.
And I've always said this, the thing that oppresses you cannot be your liberator. It can't be. No, there's no way that it can be.
A lot of these Christians just sound so goddamn delusional.
What were some other things that you saw that you remember?
I saw Biggie in hell.
The name of this video is called I Seen Michael Jackson in Hell. I knew that the Father, Christ, the Son, I knew he brought me there.
I had a dream that I saw SpongeBob in hell taking orders from demons. Like the demons was telling him what to do on TV, what to put on this, as God is my witness, I am not lying. I have no reason to lie. This would be a stupid lie, okay?
Real Christians know that your identity in Christ comes before anything else you identify as. I can't believe that this is even a real topic of conversation.
Why is it always black people when they go to hell? You ain't see Ron. Reagan there. You ain't see no KKK members. I'm seriously starting to think that the Christian God don't like black people, bro. And to the young lady stating that she's Christian before being black, nonsense. I'm pretty sure one of the first things that she learned was that she's black. And what's the problem with putting your blackness first? Christianity is literally labeled after a white man, and that goes for pretty much.
Bro, I want to say this, right? What black people have to understand is that there are two gods. And there are two gods, right? The God that you worship is not the same God that the slave master worshiped. They worship a God of abundance. You worship a God of scarcity. That's the key distinction. You worship a God that is wrathful, a God that is malicious, malevolent, a God that does not have your best interest in heart. A God which many people would interpret as the demiurge or the Antichrist, whatever you want to ascribe it to, right? They worship a God that is all loving towards them, that is giving, that is not stingy with its blessings, etc. And they think that they have a divine right to the fruits of your labor and the resources of your home continent, of your homelands, etc. Because again, like I said, they have made God in their image rather than the other way around. Their socialization has informed their consciousness, not their consciousness informing their socialization. And so to that, right? And Karl Marx made that distinction as well. Not necessarily with regard to Christianity, but with regard to men as a whole. And to that, I say this. Stop buying into the white man's religion thinking that it is going to liberate you. If you want to say that as a person who is conscious of things, that we need to shift our perspective in Christianity, I would be willing to hear you out. But we cannot continue down this path that we have right now that promotes being docile, being complacent, and giving things up to the will of God once things get hard instead of making it reality for yourself, instead of making the best for yourself, right? They feed you these narratives, these religious narratives and ideas to keep you subjugated, not to enlighten you, not to arouse you, only to create false divisions and to get you to hate your own people, your people who have a history that predates modern history, modern interpretations of history. Your people who have a history that predates this modern epoch that spans hundreds of thousands of years. In all of its grandeur, they want you to forget that and worship this white man in the sky that has never done anything for you, that has sat down and watched slavery happen. And I say this, if you are all powerful, why do you need white men to act as your proxy to create obedience in the world? And why do you even crave obedience in the first place? That sounds like a narcissistic, hubristic man-child who doesn't have any self-awareness, or who does have self-awareness but is just openly being malicious. I'm just going to call it for what it is.
Every religion putting your blackness first. Christianity is literally labeled after a white man, and that goes for pretty much every religion. It looks like the race of people worshiping them. And to most of these white Christians, they see race. Best believe that.
Let's say that somebody was coming into our church and they're black, and would they be eligible for membership in our church? Yes, they of course they would. They'd be eligible for membership in our church. But would they be permitted to participate in, embody, and practice what I would call black culture generally in our church? The answer is absolutely not. Why? Because the characteristics that mark black culture as a generalization, in the same way Paul's talking about Cretans on Crete, they are evil, murderous, violent, bestial people. They steal, they kill, they destroy. They are sinful to the core. They have besetting sins that are like fatherlessness, sexual immorality. They molest children at a high rate. All of any criminal statistic that you could look at, almost pretty much without exception.
Talk about projection. I didn't even want to make this that.
He literally just described European culture to a T. And let me tell you something about people, right? Every accusation is a confession. Whenever they attack a group of people unprovoked, they are just projecting. This can be applied to the mass social scale when it comes to cultures and religion, but even right down to the individual level, because as above, so below. So whatever flaws people see within themselves, whatever people hate about themselves, they will project that onto you. Don't be fooled. They are acutely aware of what they are saying. They are acutely aware of what they possess inside them. That is why they say and regurgitate these narratives to no end. These are preset, these are not responses. These are preset ideations and talking points that have been programmed to their subconscious mind through repetition to the point where this is their reality and they cannot see beyond that. So they are aware of what they are saying. They are aware of what they are doing. Again, don't just extrapolate this to race. You can extrapolate this to interpersonal relations as well. You can extrapolate this to people who try to hold you back in life, to bullies, to tormentors, to abusers, whatever you want to say, right? Any time that people criticize you like that unprovoked, they are just projecting their weaknesses and shortcomings onto you, okay? Now, put this on the macro scale, and it's the same thing, because it is possible for a society to adopt these same psychiatric and psychological proclivities as a person. Having said that, right? So, like I said, let me go further into that. It is possible for a society to be narcissistic, psychopathic, etc. Right? It is possible for a society to be malicious and just inherently evil. It is, right? Because how a society is a reflection of the people within that society. So a society full of pure and righteous people would not be evil. Okay? If a society or a government is evil, that is because the people are evil. White Christians will always see themselves as white first and a Christian second. And I said this before, their God is white supremacy. What they ascribe themselves to first and foremost is whiteness. What they worship first and foremost is whiteness. They are extremely materialistic because they do not have a spiritual ethos to scaffold their religion, because they do not have a connection to the divine. And so because they don't have that connection, they only focus on the physical, which is why traits like whiteness and phenotypical expression supersedes all else. They are too caught up and trapped in the physical world. That's how you get things like Judeo-Christianity. That's why they find solidarity within those people, because those people can't even go to heaven. I'll get into that later. They are stuck in this world, in this material world, and they try to make the most out of it because they cannot go to heaven. And whether that is an issue of theological conundrums, or that's just their express and manifest actions interpreted esoterically, the point remains the same. They do not have access to a divine source, so they focus on materialism, and they make that materialistic perspective their God, their worldview, and they try to force that upon everybody else to create this myopic myopic lens or landscape through which you can see and interpret reality. And this is how you get things like capitalism, the worship of money, etc., over the worship of human life, over the worship of spirituality, over the worship of creativity and intrinsic motivation. Everything is ascribed to something external rather than what is internal, right? Or rather than what is divine. Pay very close attention to that. You will see that trend multiplied to no end in every aspect of Western and Americanized society.
Type of video, but white people throughout history have been some of the most demonic and evil people to ever touch earth. Every place they went to and conquered, they killed all the people, the women, killed the kids, gave people diseases. I mean, it goes on and on. I'm gonna kick it off with this. White men make up 31% of the US population, but they make up 71% of the people caught with child you know what. And take a look on the screen right here. All of these people committed some of the most heinous acts in just this month alone. It's not even all of them, but guess what? I'm gonna just roll the footage.
A Webster County man has been sentenced to federal prison. Officials at the Kentucky Attorney General's office say 26-year-old Michael Puckett was sentenced to 30 years after pleading guilty to rape, assault, and criminal abuse of a child. Officials say his victim was a
usual suspects.
6-month-old baby who had to be flown to abuse of a child. Officials say his victim was a 6-month-old baby who had to be flown to the hospital.
The Department of Homeland Security has announced charges that Charleston County Magistrate Judge James B. Gosnell Jr. is facing. They say Gosnell has been arrested for possessing child sexual abuse materials. Department of Homeland Security investigators reportedly got a tip from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children.
It's been a heartbreaking scene here in Rowan County as we've learned more information on a double homicide that claimed the lives of a mother and a daughter. Police say the Rowan County Sheriff's Office was called to a home just after 10 in the morning for a wellness check. That's where they found the victims.
We begin at 10 with that tragedy in York County, PA, one of the deadliest days for Pennsylvania law enforcement this century. 3 members of law enforcement are dead, 2 more seriously injured.
And we're learning Ruth attended high school in York County. This is his yearbook picture from the 2020 Southwestern High School yearbook.
Tonight, we're learning more about the man who opened fire at a Dallas ICE field office, shooting 3 detainees. 1 died, 2 others were critically hurt. FBI Director Kash Patel detailed some of the investigation into 29-year-old Joshua Yan.
If I showed every news clip, best believe this video.
See, this is the problem with entitlement culture. And I could go on a limb here and say that this is just inherent to their behavior based off of historical trends and patterns. But let's just say it's just the entitlement culture for just to play devil's advocate, right? You have everything. You have the entire world, quite literally. You are a white person in America, especially a white man. But again, I'm not going to give the white women a pass because they're a part of the system as well. 40% of slave owners were white women. You are a white man, right? White person. You have the world literally in the palm of your. Your people spent the last 300 years, 400 years conquering everything. With the only places you didn't manage to conquer were like China, or even they conquered China for a while, century of humiliation, right? So there's really no place on earth that you guys haven't conquered, at least for a period of time. And still, you resort to atrocities, to crime, to survivalist instincts. It's still not enough for you. And this is what I say. This is the hyper-materialist ethos that has laid the groundwork for, that has been the dominant perspective of this reality. Where everything is focused on material and political and social gain. And there's too much of an emphasis on what you don't have externally, which creates this scarcity mindset versus what you have internally. So instead of teaching self-love, and America is, don't get it wrong, America is a child-hating country. America hates the youth, right? It hates children, it hates the youth. We know this because we continue to sacrifice children every time there is a school massacre for the sake of the Second Amendment. And the reason why this country loves the Second Amendment so much is because historically speaking, like militias and armed white people have been used as a tool of racial violence to oppress Black people from attaining any sort of upward mobility or social progress as a community. And so you sacrifice children to maintain white supremacy. If we just look at the pattern, the link right there, that is a form of child sacrifice. So whenever people say, oh, these people did child sacrifice, this culture did child sacrifice, America does it too. Okay, getting back to my point, where is I going? Yeah, y'all literally have the world in your hands. It's not enough because materialism, the problem with materialism is that you constantly look at the external. When you only look at the external, you're looking at an illusion, and the illusion constantly changes. So you have to, because the illusion is scaffolded by a broader cause or something that is metaphysical, and something that's metaphysical is always changing because everything everything is constantly changing, constantly in motion. The universe works in rhythm and motion and waves and cycles. That is the natural geometry, the energy of reality, right? And so because of that, you will always be looking at an illusion, and that illusion will never satiate you because what you need is something internal. You need to shift internally and to ground yourself internally, so that way you don't look to what is beyond for your salvation, right? And not only is that the problem with Christianity, but that's the problem with the broader American culture and the broader American psychology as well. So with these white boys, their issue is that they're not looking at the internal. They're looking at the external. So they're looking at what's going wrong, what they don't have, what they feel like they should be entitled to that they are not getting. And because of that, their only reaction, and this goes back to things like stoic masculinity, is to lash out instead of self-reflecting and being like, what do I need to do to get what I actually want? What am I not doing? What am I lacking as an individual? And so most people are not going to come to that intrinsically, especially when they have been conditioned to look at the external solely. So instead, the only possible reaction, lash out, violence, etc., right? Because what you have been entitled to through scripture, through doctrine, etc., is incongruous with your material reality. And so what you need to do is shift that focus and realize that you are not actually entitled to anything because you don't own anything. And this is where, when I was Buddhist, I adopted this philosophy, this idea what people would call no self, or even being non-dualistic or non-material. I don't own anything. Life is constant. I believe that life is constantly changing. At a moment's notice, you can do everything right. At a moment's notice, some tragedy could strike, and I'm not wishing that upon me or anybody. I would say that I rebuke that, and to a degree that I do. I do rebuke that, right? But that doesn't change the fact that it is true. At a moment's notice, a tragedy could strike. At a moment's notice, everything could be uprooted. A meteor could hit the earth right now. We're all gone, right? We don't have as much control as we would like to think that we do. And the materialist context has made us think that we do. It has inundated people with this idea, this false notion that we are the masters of the universe and of nature, when in truth we are a part of it. But living outside of that equilibrium only causes disruption, and the only response to that disruption, and eventually the universe and nature will correct this, is disaster. And that's what you see on an individual level with the psychological crisis that people who adopt this mentality have. And on the broad scale, it leads to mass social psychosis, unrest, violence, etc. On the naturalistic and ecological scale, it leads to catastrophe and cataclysm. As above, so below. We are on the cusp of a potential large-scale human disaster akin to what happened 12,000 years ago with the Younger Dryas, if we don't shift our cultural and civilizational perspective on how to conduct ourselves in this world.
It'll be about 3 hours long. But to get back on track, man, I need all of my black people to get out of this religious psychosis. And in my opinion, we need to be showing more love to our ancestors, because they really was the ones that fought for our freedom. Nat Turner, Harriet Tubman, Gabriel Prosser, and Mark Vesey. These are people that we know are real and actually helped us. And I just feel like Christianity, especially in the black community, is always used as a clutch. Whenever something bad happens, it's because of the devil. And then when something good happens, it's because of God. Like, no. We all know that auntie that have all of these health problems. She 300 pounds, diabetes, high blood pressure, and she blame it on the devil. No, put the bullshit food down and have some discipline. And then on the other hand, say you do something good, you get a job promotion. It's thank God he did it.
Matthew 6:33, it literally says the kingdom of heaven is within you, which means that everything you do, right? And what is it? Isaiah 45:6 or 45:7? Isaiah 45:7. I form the light, I form the darkness, I create the light, the good, the evil, blah blah blah. I'm paraphrasing, right? The kingdom of heaven is within you. God is within, right? And God creates the light and the dark. So let's examine that syllogism, right? Matthew 6:33. The kingdom of heaven is within. God exists within. Isaiah 45:7. I create the light. I create the dark. I create the peace. I create the storm. Everything that happens to you is a result of your personal successes and failures, right? Is a result, and also how you choose to interpret and see them, right? Because the idea of like winning and losing is an illusion, right? You either win or you learn. Every battle is a lecture to some degree or another. And so we need to take accountability for ourselves. That doesn't negate the effect that social systems have on our interpretation, and the fact that we can only have free will within the context of our ability to understand the free will based off of how we're socialized. But what that means is that within those parameters and within our intrinsic instincts and ideations, we have to take accountability and understand that we are responsible for our predicaments in life. We're responsible for our successes as much as we are our failures. We cannot scapegoat the devil, because the devil is also a part of the divine source as well, because it's just an interpretation or a division or a duality, which is an illusion at the end of the day, of something that appears as something that it is not necessarily evil, but just illusion, right? Satan is not making you unfit. You are. God is not necessarily bestowing these blessings upon you. You are. And once you see the connection between you and God, and you realize that they're one and the same, which goes into the Hindu concept of Atman and Brahman, etc., right? Or the Christ and man duality, or Jesus and God duality, or God and man duality. It's the same thing, just interpreted differently or labeled differently. Reality becomes much more clear, and that's how you get into things like manifestation, the alignment between the Trinity of the mind, body, and spirit of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, or focus, intent, and ritual, and the occult. It's the same thing.
No, you did that. Give yourself some praise. And a lot of people might see this as being narcissist or I guess blasphemy, but it's just real, man. And this life stuff is so weird because I know countless people that were great humans and they passed away young. Meanwhile, you got all of these rich billionaires living around and they're enjoying their life. Like, and it's like, damn, why isn't God punishing them? You know what I'm saying? And then Christianity just trains you to wait on someone to come help. Oh yeah, Jesus coming back to.
And a lot of people will get on, like, and I'm not defending the rich at all. A lot of people will get on the rich and the wealthy for selling their souls for money, but you sell your soul for poverty and mediocrity every day.
Save us. No, he not. If Jesus didn't come and save them slaves, what make you think he about to come save your black ass in the best time to be a black person? We have so much power in the black community. If we really want to make a change, y'all, we can boycott so much stuff. If you affect their money, you can make, oh my goodness, this is the real thing, and I'm going to do a video on it, man. We have to go against capitalism. Capitalism is the root of all evil. Yes, slavery was bad, but the main reason they did it was because of the money. It made so much money, capitalism. And I'm not telling you to not believe in a higher power, but this white God and this Christian or whatever you want to believe in, bro, the shit sound bullshit, man. But look, I hope y'all enjoyed this video, man. I hope y'all not too mad at me. I gotta keep it 100 with y'all. I get a lot of...
We have to be honest about the fact that a lot of people who are black and Christian are suffering from mass psychosis. The world is much more mentally ill than a lot of people would like to acknowledge, right? And so there is mental illness and there is a psychosis that comes with a degree of religiosity, especially Christian religiosity, but especially within the black community. And this is multiplied even more when it comes to black conservatives who often are Christians and black conservative Christians, is that you have to literally ignore history and reality and just objectivity for a preconceived and a firm stance that has nothing to do with what has actually occurred historically or the actual patterns that occur within reality. They're sick. They're sick. And lastly, with regards to white supremacy and slavery and things like that, right? And ideations of supremacy. To constantly need to conquer is a testament to desperation and scarcity rather than abundance. If you are someone who is of abundance, who is of essence, and has a supreme station, you don't have to conquer and enslave people who are, quote, beneath you. Only people who are inferior try to bring down other people.